I'm Chris Morgan, host of The Wild. Over the last 35 years, I've worked in the wildest places on Earth, tracking tigers in Siberia, filming orangutans in Borneo, following humpback whales, migrating jaguars, iridescent hummingbirds, and learning from the people devoted to protecting them. These stories changed how I see the world. I think they'll do the same for you. The Wild with Chris Morgan, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey there, Trish Murphy here. This summer, Seattle Now is getting your opinions on a weekly question. This week, we've got the Mariners on our mind. After their performance last year, hopes were high for this team, but so far, fans have been disappointed. Do you think the Mariners can turn their season around? Answer via voice note in the KUOW app. Just select Talk to Us to share your response. More at KUOW.org/question.
Economic anxiety has reached a fever pitch. Mortgage rates are creeping back up, there's a war on, and companies seem more focused on investing in AI than hiring people.
Many Americans are worried about their finances, but still splurging more than they're saving, especially the youngest generations.
Even though Americans are worried about the economy, they seem to be spending more.
Just keep on spending, even though you're already bogged down with credit card debt.
Household debt is at an all-time high, and studies show that Gen Z is spending twice as much as they have in their savings accounts.
Economists call them doom spenders. Faced with the high cost of living and an uncertain future, they are racking up more debt than ever.
It's a counterintuitive way for many of us to relieve stress in the face of enormous economic pressure. This is Booming. I'm Joshua McNichols.
And I'm Monica Nicholsberg. Today, more than half of Gen Z and millennials say they're living from paycheck to paycheck, yet their spending is surging, and they're not the only ones. What happens to the economy over the long term when so many people are dropping cash like there's no tomorrow? That's coming up.
Once a year, Donna and I spend a day treating ourselves. What do we treat ourselves to?
Clothes.
Treat yourself.
Fragrances.
Treat yourself.
Massages.
Treat yourself.
Mimosas.
Treat yourself.
Fine leather goods.
Treat yourself.
It's the best day of the year.
The best day of the year!
Joshua, have you ever treated yourself to something a little frivolous or that you couldn't afford, maybe just to make yourself feel better?
Well, I gotta admit, I'm a little bit of the caricature of the opposite of this. I mean, like, during the Great Recession, we gave up alcohol for a little while.
Wow.
But it was only at the beginning.
Monk-like.
Yeah. But I do confess, I got permission from my partner, Emily, to share this. During the pandemic, she bought up every single Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic book that she could get her hands on.
Wow. She's a Buffy fan.
Yeah, she is. She just sold them again, like last year, but she doesn't regret it.
I think that is a worthy way to comfort yourself in difficult times.
Yeah. Have you ever bought anything like that?
I have bought less responsibly. Yeah, the one, I mean, I do this all the time, but the one that really stands out in my memory is when I was, I must have been 21. I was living in New York at the time, and I had just met this boy who would go on to become my husband. And I really wanted to see him. And I was back in the city. I think I had like maybe $1,000 in my checking account, and I spent like 900 of them on a plane ticket for that weekend to go back to Seattle to see him. But hey, it worked out.
It paid off. That was a good investment.
It was, yeah. And that's exactly how I was thinking about it at the time.
And that was something that, paid off a long time ago. But there's a lot of reasons why people might spend money on something like that, even though it might not always be a great investment that like leads to a marriage or something like that.
It just makes you feel better in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something I'm hearing from a lot of folks and folks with kids. They're saying their economic futures look really uncertain to them. So they're spending money now on things to make them feel better in the moment. It's fueled by this sense that people can't afford the big things anymore, like houses or saving for retirement. So they're buying smaller things and experiences instead.
I've heard of this too as an economic phenomenon.
So I found someone who might be like the foremost expert on the topic, and her name is Shikha Jain. She's an analyst who studies North American consumers and the things they buy. She's based in Boston. I asked her how doom spending is reshaping the economy. So sit back and treat yourself to this interview.
My name is Shika Jain, and I'm partner and head of Consumer North America for Simon Kucher and Partners.
I want to ask you first about doom spending, which is something you've written about. What is doom spending?
So doom spending is the idea that it's not just shopping, it's a coping mechanism. And trying to find joy, control in a moment where everything else feels like it's slipping away, when there's a lot of uncertainty, when there's a lot of volatility in the macroeconomics, life is just getting harder. So it's this idea of, if I can't count on tomorrow, or I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, I'm going to buy today to get a little bit of that dopamine hit, to get a little bit of retail therapy, and just make myself feel good in the moment,
So who is doom spending the most?
Doom spending is true across all age categories, but obviously it hurts Gen Z the most because they are the least likely to have built up wealth and have lower incomes. They typically spend twice as much as they save. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with the high cost of living. They feel like the macroeconomics are against them. They don't have a lot of job security. They haven't built up a lot of independent wealth. They are looking to second jobs and side hustles as a way to just keep up with some of their lifestyle needs. So that's really what is driving some of this behavior. And of course, when you look at the broader world, geopolitical instability, global economics, even the continuous focus on AI and what that means for automation and a lot of the types of jobs that entry-level workers do, those are the things that I think make them nervous. And when you look at Gen Z, a lot of the reasons why they're spending and they're doing non-essential spending, it's about enjoying life now. It's about reducing their stress or an outlet for negative feelings. It's about social expectations and their desire to fit in. And so a lot of that is what they're chasing, which then all lead up to their doom spending habits.
I'd like to share with you some audio from a few people that we spoke to about doom spending in their lives. And one of the first people I spoke to was Jennifer Reeves. She's Gen X and she has Gen Z kids.
I definitely find myself doom spending. I have become quite the traveler of late. I really can't afford it. I'm not someone who has any savings. I am 55 and I'm pretty sure I'll never own a home. And I make the choice to live life to its fullest. I have 2 adult children, both of whom are also spending lots of money traveling. There's a huge, elaborate wedding coming up. One of my children purchases these little plastic collectible things that I find, quite honestly, they find them quite ridiculous as well. But we seem to be filling our hopelessness with experiences and silly trinkets. And I don't know, it's terribly depressing, but life is so beautiful and got to get it while you can, I guess.
Yeah. Life is not easy in America right now because of the high cost of living, inflation, the fact that when we look at fuel prices, food prices, they're going up, right? Prices usually only go in one direction. But I don't think Jennifer's story is unique in that regard. Even in our research, we found that across generations, people prioritize experiences over material possessions. And so that for them is what motivates them. Enjoying life now is also something that is a motivating factor. Sustaining their hobbies, finding ways just to live their life and sustain their lifestyle out of habit. I think the part that I find a bit concerning is how are folks like Jennifer financing a lot of these experiences and enjoying life now.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely providing an emotional need for her. She mentioned a trip she took recently and just how good it made her feel to come back from that and to have encountered people who she met face to face, and that just is something that sustains her. So another person we spoke to, his name's David Kolsar. He's a millennial, and he mentioned a couple things that are a little nuanced here. He said that he's purchasing more things like shoes and jackets that are expensive, but he realizes that inflation will probably make them even more expensive in, the next month or so. So he's buying them now out of inflation fear, basically. And another thing he said is that, the housing affordability crisis is breaking up his friend groups. People are finding that they can't afford to buy a house and have kids in a place like Seattle where housing's super expensive. So they're moving to places like Madison, Wisconsin.
I mean, I don't mind going to Madison. It's not like the worst place to go visit, but have a friend that moves across the country and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can visit them that often or see them that much. So we may as well make the most of a good last hurrah road trip or a trip, maybe somewhere together, like maybe go to Iceland with them instead of like meeting them up in, middle America, or try to plan like a trip to Europe or some other kind of like dual trip where you both are on a vacation, and whatever kind of spending we can kind of like justify just because we're enjoying the good times we can have now instead of something indeterminate in the future.
It's the reality, right? Our research showed that 60+% of millennials and Gen Z want to own a home, but they feel like home ownership is out of reach. And actually, what's fascinating is that many of them are choosing to rent alone or with others or living at home as a way to have and free up money that would go into a mortgage or go into a down payment so that they can enjoy other aspects of life, even though they're still very interested in that.
Yeah, David said that of the friends who do have houses, they don't have kids, and people who have kids don't have houses. He mentioned he has a few friends who do have money, but even they are feeling like it's hard to scrape together enough for a home.
And that's one of those things where home ownership is coming under scrutiny. In the past, it was something a lot of people wanted to pursue because it was a sign of pride, personal achievement. It was part of the American dream. But now, given some of the challenges with affordability, home prices being too high, job security, not having enough income, not enough savings for a down payment or the upfront closing costs, the monthly payments being unaffordable, all of that, the maintenance of a house, right? And when renting can be so much more accessible and at less cost than home ownership, why wouldn't you do that and free up some of your disposable income to do some of those things that you enjoy, right?
That resonates with something I heard from another person I spoke to, and his name is John Remington, and he's Generation X, but he's got a Generation Z goddaughter, and all his friends have adult Gen Z children now. And he says they've seen what happened with their parents,
who were Generation X, who may have bought their first home maybe in the mid-90s, late 90s, and then 2008 came and they were suddenly underwater on their mortgage, and their kids saw that. They went through all that with them. They went through having to move out of that house and into a rental property because they had to basically, short sell their house. That's probably driving a lot of this phenomenon of doom spending in Generation Z.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That wound is still raw or still fresh for a lot of people. And actually, a lot of Gen X and millennials and even Gen Z are starting to see renting as a temporary phase before homeownership or just a strategic long-term lifestyle choice. So I think everything that you're saying is very true. And I don't think it's just purely a single generation. Folks used to see home ownership as a way to grow wealth, but if you have an uncertain housing market, you don't know if that's going to pay off.
So I want to get to this question of what does this all mean? In the 2008 financial crisis, people pulled back on spending and saved and were kind of conservative with their finances. But recently, there's rampant inflation. It's this time where you might expect people to pull back, but they're not. They're spending more, and they're propping up the economy. So I'm wondering, what are the long-term consequences of this?
Yeah, you're going to have folks that don't have a lot of savings. They have not really grown their wealth. There's going to be portions of consumers and the American population that will always struggle. There's another group that will be able to achieve that, let's say reach middle class or be able to, even grow wealth and participate in some of the ways that the American capitalism structure is set up. However, the one thing that has made it much easier is debt. Younger Americans see debt as a tool, and Gen Z starts both saving and investing, but also taking on debt at very young ages. So roughly at 20 is when they start, right? Versus baby boomers that didn't start taking on debt until they were closer to 28. So for me, the more critical thing is not just do you have enough savings for retirement or to grow wealth or to support Social Security programs, but also the fact that many of them have multiple credit cards. They're carrying over a debt balance from month to month, because what happens when you can no longer pay off your debt? What happens when you no longer have the ability to pay for household essentials, right? And if I look at what Gen Z is carrying in terms of debt, a lot of it is student loans, but a lot of it is also buy now, pay later and installment programs that they've participated in.
You mentioned earlier this idea of the American dream and suggested that it's changed, that there is sort of a new American dream.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what is the new American dream?
The new American dream still has elements of the traditional American dream around owning a home, raising a family, achieving success, retiring comfortably, having financial stability and stable employment, all of that, right? However, a lot more shift towards this idea of personal freedom and independence. This idea that there's no one way to achieve the dream, but you can kind of customize it the way you want. If I might trade off things like income for flexibility, and flexibility is defined by things like the ability to work wherever I want or to have and design the kinds of hours that I want. So that is very interesting to me, is that people are actually changing their approach to work as probably as part of this. So can I take time off? Can I balance work and family? Can I have control over my schedule? Can I still have job security if I want to be flexible? Can I have control over my workload? In addition, younger Americans are more likely to have more than one income generating role or responsibility versus baby boomers just usually had one source of income. And now younger generations are trying to do a lot more with their time. Yeah, they need the extra income. They can use it to do some of these doom spending habits like affording non-essentials, travel, dining, experiences. Some of them have extra time, so why not fill it?
Yeah, we've been talking about some of the negative consequences to buying now and worrying later, but some of the adaptations that you're describing now seem to suggest ways in which people are maybe more fulfilled or could be more fulfilled than in previous generations, where maybe the only definition of success was tied to this sort of financial achievement. I take some inspiration from maybe people who are finding other ways to sort of define success for themselves.
If that is to me very critical, which is that there's still a lot of optimism in the American population and in Americans. A lot of people, despite the fact that the American dream is changing, they're still connected to the dream. This idea that we have this constant optimism, this hope that's kind of built into the DNA of the American. We gave ourselves still the strongest chance of success, despite all these headwinds, despite all these difficulties that we might face.
Well, Shika Jane, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me, Joshua. It's been wonderful.
We'll be back with more booming after a quick break.
Are you the one that gets the plans out of the group chat and into an actual restaurant? Let me help you out. I'm Brandy Fullwood, host of Seattle Eats, and I gotta say, this podcast is for you. Every week I talk to chefs, critics, industry people about the best places to eat in Seattle, so you always know where to go next. Listen to Seattle Eats on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
So, Monica, any thoughts about what you just heard?
This conversation was really interesting, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of am of two minds on this. On the one hand, you have people like Jennifer who, I don't know, she just really illustrated how this can both be something that feels really sad to people, missing out on something like homeownership, but also a way to sort of reclaim the beauty of living, through these immediate experiences. But it does make me wonder about spending and how not all types of spending are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how much overall life satisfaction people get from, quote unquote, doom spending. Is it that fleeting, living in the moment? Does it cost a more long-term sense of sort of pride and investment in your community by owning a home, for example? Because I think that this trend has the power to be pretty politically destabilizing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think decision makers might look at the sort of aggregate economic data, look at consumer spending, look at GDP and say like, hey, we're doing kind of okay. People are still spending money. But underneath that, we have this very unequal way that they're spending money. And we have the types of spending that lead to a more rooted sense of the good life in this country is slipping away and being replaced by a very different thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the sad thing is that I think in some ways this is the experience of this doom spending is different by class. Like if you're a low-income household, then it comes with all these additional costs. If you're a high-income household, actually a big portion of the spending that's going on is coming from people who aren't plagued by these same kinds of conflict. They have a lot of disposable income to spend and are not hurt by spending it in the same way because there's such economic inequality between, and there's this big gap where there's not as much of a middle class as there used to be. So
in that case, there's not really any reason not to spend like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. There's less consequences for them.
But we're also seeing lower income folks doing something similar with potentially much more grave consequences, like not having a safety net when they retire.
Yep.
How new is this phenomenon? Because we have heard versions of it from economists in the past. On the show, we've talked about the lipstick effect, where in recessions, spending on things like luxury handbags goes down, but smaller treats or luxuries like lipstick goes up.
Yeah, I think a lot of these patterns are things that recur over time in different cycles, But the thing that captures my attention now is just some of the records in terms of how much people are going into debt, And I think a lot of that is because of, as Shika said, these additional ways people have to go into debt now. She talked about there's programs like Klarna that let you kind of, make your purchases seem smaller by putting them into monthly payments.
This is buy now, pay later.
Buy now, pay later. And then, we didn't even get into like gambling, which is a major way, through like Kalshi and stuff, people are going into debt these days.
Yeah, and even investing, like apps like Robinhood have made it a lot more accessible to young people to put their money in the stock market when they don't feel like they can put it into a home. It seems like homeownership is really at the center of this. Like when you take out that middle, that like central pillar of what it means to build wealth and feel rooted and economically stable in this country, all of these other things start to happen around it.
Yeah, and we've just got less of a structure for safe, reliable, safety net for after we're retired and need more medical care and things like that. There's less of that safety net. And so more people are turning to these other options, some of which are just, bad ideas and some of which are providing them with some, some balm, some emotional balm, but it's not the same as a social safety net.
Sure. Well, Joshua, thanks for bringing us this story.
Yeah, no problem. That's it for Booming, and thanks for listening.
If you have a question about the economy or a story idea for us, please email us at booming@kuow.org, or you can leave us a voicemail at 206-221-7158.
And we always like to thank people who are donating to the show because, we couldn't do it without you. So if you want to donate, go to kuow.org/booming. And thanks.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Alec Cowan. Our editor is Carol Smith. Our music is by Blue Dot Sessions, Artlist, Music Bed, and Alec Cowan. I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
I'm Joshua McNichols, and we'll see you next time.
On the latest Sound Politics, Katie Wilson made some big promises when she ran for Seattle mayor.
She's more than 100 days in office, and her first big self-imposed deadline is coming up. Can she set up 500 shelter beds in time for the World Cup?
Deadlines. Who cares about them, right?
I mean, journalists definitely, and voters maybe?
Also, why some of Wilson's supporters are not happy with her moves out of the gate. All of that on Sound Politics, wherever you get your podcasts.